So there's a quote I've come across in the past, and I've posted it on my social media, and it says, texting isn't courting. Now, some of you may agree or disagree, but we're not going to focus on the texting part. Let's focus on the courting part. Because the reality is there's a lot of things in today's world that women feel like are no longer looking like courting, right? And a lot of women, this leads them to feeling frustrated because it's like, what's wrong with these men nowadays? They don't court, they don't put forth that effort. They're unwilling to put forth the work that men from the old days, so to speak, used to put in. And this creates not just frustration, for some anger, and for others, discouragement to the point of feeling like you don't want to date anymore. What's the point? It's nonsense out here in these streets, right? And I understand. I completely get it. But one, let me just say, do not be discouraged. And I'm going to explain at the very end of the video why everything I'm about to lay out to you is not something to take in a negative way. My videos are not to make you feel bad. They are to enlighten you. And through enlightenment, you can then understand how to better navigate things to get better results. Okay? And I do believe there is a huge misunderstanding, or maybe the better word is a huge lack of understanding in regards to why so many men have stopped courting. All right. Now, courting, and some people may look at it differently on what that entails. But essentially, courting is giving special attention to someone. Typically, we're talking about man to woman with the intention of eventually marrying this woman. All right. And in today's world, being official and then with the intent to ultimately marry. And so this used to be a common thing in the world that we once lived in, or before we were here, okay? And now the landscape is very different. And again, the question is why? Why is it so different? So I want to lay out for you some things to understand. The first thing I want to mention is men have stopped courting because a lot of men today have become extremely unhealthy. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, there is no official study on this, right? This is my perspective due to being in this position as a coach, talking to tons of people, what I'm observing, and what I do know from research I've done in different areas. The reality is that there was a study recently that was done saying how today's men, I forgot what the percentage is, how so many men have given up on dating, have given up on pursuing women, right? They're giving their time to other things. And a lot of people will present that study and make it about men are so discouraged by the state of women, the way women are going about their relationships, what women are requiring, what they feel is a hassle. And I'm not going to say those things don't play a role, but I think a huge underlying issue that doesn't get discussed enough is that men are nowhere near as healthy today as they once were. So one of those things that speaks to that issue is men today are experiencing the lowest levels of testosterone ever recorded for men in the history of life, all right? And there's not just reason to believe, there is studies that show, I think there was one study that said a man today in his 20s has testosterone as low as a man who was 60 in the 40s, all right? Or maybe it was in the 60s. Either way, from a while back, all right? And so many things contribute to testosterone being low. Environmental factors, all kinds of toxins, excess porn usage. Some would, just so I clarify, the studies will say that porn usage itself does not decrease testosterone. However, when a man is excessively engaging in porn, he tends to be more sedentary, and that sedentary lifestyle leads to lower testosterone. So you can draw a correlation between the two, all right? And we talk about the food that people are eating and just so many different things. Now, let me just throw in there, because I'm so big on health. It's deeper than testosterone. You got people, men and women, but we're talking about men right now, deficient in vitamin D, deficient in zinc levels, deficient magnesium. So many things that they're lacking from a health perspective that's throwing their body out of whack. Now, how does this contribute to men not courting and men not pursuing women? Well, when you are not healthy as a man, you lack a level of drive. You lack a level of desire. Hell, your libido is going to be lower. And whether we like it or not, high libidos contribute to men wanting to pursue women, right? Some for the wrong reasons, but back in the days when courting was a more common thing and the understanding was to get fulfillment in the bedroom, you had to get married. You had to get serious with somebody. So you had to be willing to go further. And without that health, underlying health being corrected for so many men, it is taking away that fire, I believe. All right. Again, this is my perspective. I strongly believe these things. And some of this is based on research. But it is really hindering men having that same energy they once had for women. Now, I don't say this to you as if you got, like, it's not a woman's responsibility to fix men's testosterone, right? It's not a woman's responsibility to fix a man's drive. However, I think you understanding and knowing that, I always feel like clarity can help bring peace and clarity can help bring understanding. And that's why I give you this information. I do think that if you have brothers or sons and you notice a lack of drive in them, not just with women, in general in life, one of the things you should encourage them or bring to their attention is getting their hormone levels checked, getting all these different things checked to see where they're at physically or from a health perspective, because fixing those things can fix a lot. All right. A lot. I even argue a lot of men aren't lazy. They're just unhealthy. All right. I'm not going to say some are just lazy. Some lack a lot of motivation, even if they were healthier. But a lot of men, it's the underlying health issue that has contributed to a greater disconnect between men and women and some of the traditional ways that we used to do things. All right. So another reason why men today have stopped courting, and let me just tell you right now, some of y'all ain't going to like this one. And I really need you to listen to the whole explanation because it's real. It's a huge contributing factor and you need to understand it. So another reason why men have stopped courting is because for too long, they have seen bad behavior get rewarded. What am I talking about here? Once upon a time, there were men who were willing to do the whole courting process. Focus on this one woman, take her on dates, give her time, attention, all these things. All right. And even wait for intimacy. All right. And what would happen? And I've seen this countless times. I've heard countless stories. All right. And if you asked other men, they could verify this. So many times men have experienced being that guy who is doing all of that, courting this woman, putting his all, only to hear or find out or have it confirmed that she went and slept with some other guy. That she went to give this other guy her time and attention while this quote unquote good guy, this guy who's so serious about her, is busting his behind and he's not getting anywhere with it. Okay. And so, or even if he feels like he's getting somewhere, this guy is getting more from her for doing so much less. Now, that example or that point, a woman has we're not judging the woman for who she chose to do whatever with. We're not saying she owes the man who courted her anything, right? Courting is a process of seeing if we also want to be together. However, when you are on the end of giving, only to see someone else reap benefits, that's going to discourage you. That's going to cause hesitation in how one moves forward. But it goes beyond just when a man is courting and seeing this other guy get the woman. Countless men have been madly in love with a woman, only to see her remain either in a relationship or dealing with or caught up in a situation with a man who is clearly bad for her. All right. Now, I understand there's a lot of, sometimes there's more than meets the eye in these situations. There's things that man may not understand that's contributing to why this woman entertains this guy. I do believe that some men scapegoat, or they look at the whole idea that women don't want a good man. I don't agree with that, right? I feel that for a lot of quote unquote good men, what they did not realize was they were not walking in masculine energy while still being good. And you can do both. You can do both. But they were lacking that part, and that quote unquote bad guy was exuding more masculine energy. And for a lot of women, and depending on what they've already been through, what stage of life they're in, may still be more drawn to that and overlook the good guy or not be as interested in him, right? Regardless, the men just saw countless examples of this happening. And to this day, there are still situations like that where these men are seeing women not just choose to entertain this guy. That it's one thing. We're not going to even include situations where maybe, even though I'm a firm believer that women's intuition is super strong and that you guys see red flags, you may not always embrace them. You may tend to rationalize past them, but typically, if not always, you see something, right? However, we're going to exclude the situations where a man was just putting on the most amazing act and acting so nice and completely bamboozled a woman, right? Only to end up being bad. We're going to leave those out. We're going to only include the ones where everybody and their mama knew this man was bad. All right? Like everyone can see this dude is trouble, yet this woman still would entertain, engage, and pour into him. And so for a lot of men, that just made them feel like, what's the point? What's the point of all this courting if I end up losing every time and this other guy who does less than me wins? Which is what has contributed to the perception or the belief that many people have. That you may have seen it, you may have heard it. They make jokes about it sometimes in shows where they say the worse you treat a woman, the better you'll get from her. All right. Now, again, I don't condone that. I don't co-sign that. I don't believe in that. I will say, if we're being real, many men have used that approach and actually gotten positive results. Now, I would make it clear, what they don't realize is they're setting themselves up for a very toxic relationship. So yes, it may gain that woman's attention in the moment, but they don't understand what they're setting themselves up for in the long run, right? So, and that's why men who are just trying to be casual, who just want to get a woman in bed as quickly as possible, they may use some of these tactics. And unfortunately, whether you say it wouldn't work for you, it has worked on many others, and it continues to work. All right. And that only feeds men's belief that it's the bad behavior that gets you more than the good behavior. And so, of course, that undermines a man's willingness to embrace the need to properly court a woman. Now, make it clear, not every man's thinking like that. There are tons of men who are still willing to court or willing to do all those things, but more and more men fall away from that approach because of this whole seeing bad behavior being rewarded. All right, so let's keep this going. Another reason why men have stopped courting is because it has not been an effective approach for them personally, okay? So kind of piggybacking off of seeing the bad behavior be rewarded, seeing that their efforts weren't as well received, right, as maybe this guy who was doing much less than them. Even if there's not another man involved, even if this woman doesn't entertain somebody else and sleeps with somebody else or whatever, a lot of men in today's world have tried this whole courting thing and it hasn't gotten them results. And men are very 1 + 1 = 2. So if I do this and it gets me that, all right, cool. And that's the result I want, then I'm more likely to do it. But if I keep doing this and it's not getting me that, then it's like, what am I doing here? Quick story, perfect example. I remember speaking at an event one time and a guy came to me and he's like, man, I just moved to the city and I've been trying to intentionally date, but I don't know how to keep this going because I've been on, let's say in a month or 2 months time, he's been on 15 dates, okay? I can't remember the exact number, but I know he said for the past month, he's spending over $1,000 a month, maybe even more, basically to go on all these dates. And here he is, nothing has panned out, right? And so unless a man has the resources to keep up that kind of pace, he naturally has to slow down. He naturally can't keep doing the same thing with each woman because one, it's a financial issue. Because if a lot of women, and I know not every woman requires it, and I suggest to men to be more creative with their dates, find ways that I don't believe if the woman really likes you, you have to worry about it being expensive and all these different things. Just focus on an opportunity for us to get to know each other and talk and really see if we have a connection here. But there are tons of women who want, I'm sure some of y'all saw late last year, there was a viral video about a woman being taken to Cheesecake Factory and how she was salty about that. And that blew up into this big thing. So there are tons of women who are requiring a certain level of, quality, so to speak, on a date. So for a man, if he embraces courting and he has to do that with each woman, he's never guaranteed which one is going to actually like him, right? So it's a very difficult thing to keep doing, especially when it hasn't been working. Now, consider this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, of course. But back in the days when courting was more prevalent, what you had was kind of the safeguards of usually the people who, like if a man wanted to court a woman, it typically was done through some kind of mutual connection. Like maybe friends knew each other, family, grew up in the same neighborhood. There was something there and you even had to have some level of already approval by a family member, father, something, right? Which gave you some level of cushion and leverage, so to speak, to where if you showed up the right way, you had a good chance this would work out. Right? And you could argue a lot of women back then did not engage in letting a man court them unless they actually had potential interest or current genuine interest. Now, whether you believe it or not, there are tons of women now who will let a man take them out who ain't got no interest. All right? Will go out for a free meal or because she's bored. Okay? Again, you may not do that. Your friends, you may say, may not do that. Though I would argue if they would, they may not tell you, okay? But a lot of women do it, plain and simple. So again, this creates a dynamic where it becomes difficult for a man to continuously take this approach when he doesn't have those safeguards anymore. He doesn't have as good of a chance of it working as long as he shows up the way it used to be once upon a time. And he may not have the budget to keep that going because he doesn't know who it's going to actually work out with. Now, that doesn't make an excuse for men who aren't putting forth a certain level of effort. It does speak to the whole maybe taking you out to certain places and things of that nature. But of course, a phone call is free. But the whole overall approach of I'm putting forth all this effort, I'm giving her my full attention, and it's not getting me results starts to then put that man in the mindset of, why am I even doing this? All right, before I get to the next point, real quick, I want you to join my special club that sends you little messages and reminders, encouragement, all to kind of pour love, peace, positive energy into your life. You can go to messagesfromstephan.com and join today. It's only $5 a month, and a portion of the proceeds will go to my new nonprofit, Healing Generations Foundation, where we're looking to impact a lot of the communities with affordable or even free therapy and coaching and much more than that. We're going to be doing a lot bigger things than that. So would love your support. Join the club. Go to messagesfromstephan.com or click the link in the description or in the comment section. Now, the next reason I need to mention as far as why men have stopped courting women is because casual relationships have become so common. All right. So I've said this before, but you may not have heard it. I am of the belief that the boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, forget casual relationships for a second, but boyfriend and girlfriend relationship dynamic has, I have to use the word, destroyed marriage and relationships in the sense that it's given people this this practice marriage, so to speak, the way people go about it. And I always say, if you sit down with someone who has experienced emotional trauma, there tends to be two places where it comes from. Childhood, so from family, and romantic relationships, and specifically boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. So to me, that in itself undermined what used to be the old process of courting with the intention of this is someone I'm looking at as potentially a wife and all these things, because now they don't have to look at you as potentially a wife. They can just look at you as, all right, somebody I just want to kick it with right now or be in a relationship with, but I don't know what I'll do after that. But then we took it a step further in society, and now casual relationships, non-committed or non-labeled relationships have become much more common now. And so again, part of what was the motivation in a man courting and doing, really showing up in the process was the fact that if you don't do that, you're not going to get any woman. Most men, of course, there's going to always be some men who can circumvent the system, so to speak, right? But the average man, if he didn't show up in that process of courting, he wasn't going home with anything. So he had to really put it together. Whereas now, you don't have to do as much. And you can still get the companionship of a woman. You can still get her time. You can still get intimacy. For some men, you can still get free food. You can still get your clothes washed. You can still get a place to stay. I'm just listing all the things that these men today can get while still being casual. Okay? And so this is definitely a contributing factor to the issue. Now, I feel the need to mention it here in my spirit moment. I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. Do not let that discourage you. I know it sounds discouraging, right? But even with the rise of casual relationships, even with the rise of men who are becoming more resistant to marriage, there is still tons of men who want real relationships. There are still tons of men who want marriage. And I'm a firm believer that when you are operating under God's system, then what's for you is for you. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the outside world around us. Like I'll give it to you in a financial way. Like I always say, I work under God's economy. So regardless of what the economy in our world is doing, right? I focus on how God is going to provide for me. I focus on what God needs me to do to navigate through this. I don't need to get distracted or allow what's happening in the outside world to throw me off, because a lot of times that becomes a distraction that keeps us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. So in regards to relationships, it's the same thing. I'm giving you this information for clarity and understanding, but know that there is always a path to you receiving what is for you, regardless of what's going on. So again, to get back to the point, yes, the rise of casual relationships have definitely undermined the courting process, have definitely undermined a lot of the relationship dynamics that we once had in this society. But just know that you don't have to partake in that, okay? You can still stand firm on what you desire and the standards that you're going to set for someone who wants to engage with you and get to know you on a deeper level. All right, so another big reason, especially with today's world, that men have stopped courting women is because men are much more distracted now. So let me give it to you like this. I'm going to use myself. I remember when I was younger, right? And let's say let's say I'm in college, right? Or even out of college. I don't know. I'm younger, whatever. The point is, when I was younger, there was a period of time in my life where I didn't really have nothing going on, all right? And because I didn't have anything going on, I had plenty of, if I met a woman who I wanted to pursue, I had plenty of time to give focus and energy to that woman and to pursue that woman and to quote unquote court that woman, okay? However, there came a point where I got older, I got busier, got a lot more on my plate, and now my time is more scarce. Now, that alone can change a man's dynamic as far as his ability or willingness to court. Because I do think that for a lot of women who may watch this channel, I have women of all ages that watch this channel, but those who ask about why men aren't courting tend to be, let's say over 30 or over 35, because they come from a generation that was more closely coming out of that time or in that time of men still doing that. Whereas the younger generation have already been working under a different dynamic, since they've been growing up. So with that said, though, the world, it's not just an individual as he gets older can become more distracted because he has more on his plate, which then can contribute to a different level of focus when it comes to courting, but also just the world we live in. Like now, back in the days when we talk about people courting, there wasn't the internet like there is now. There wasn't porn like there is now. And that's just a reality of something that plays a huge role in distracting men. There wasn't all these things going on. There wasn't Instagram. There just wasn't all this overload on the system, right? That can keep people in the house, that can keep people tied to the TV, that can just keep people just lost in a world. Hell, video games. Video games in itself is a huge distraction for some men. Some men wake up, jump on the system, blink their eyes, and it's time to go to sleep. All right? And so when you have so much going on now, it takes away from people pursuing connection, people pursuing romantic relationships, especially when you add to that the other things I've already mentioned. So if you're a man and you already feel like this hasn't been working for you, you already feel like bad behavior has been getting rewarded, and you view yourself as a good guy, because one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that though men are seeing and believe that more bad behavior gets rewarded, some men are like, but I'm not going to cross that line. Like, I'm going to stand strong. So if I believe I'm that good guy who refuses to embrace these unhealthy tactics to get a woman, then I feel like I just can't win. You see what I'm saying? If it hasn't been working for me, I'm seeing all these other guys get the good stuff, and I'm over here with nothing. I'm just like, all right, forget about it. So when you start adding everything up, it creates a world or a society of men who just feel like there's no point. And they're not going to engage in pursuing like people once used to pursue. Now, again, one thing I'll say is this. I think a lot of people lose their passion or desire to pursue a lot of men because the reality is that if you're not that woman for him and he's not that man for you, then he's not going to have that motivation in many cases to want to put forth that kind of effort. So basically what I'm saying is there are men right now who are saying, man, I'm done. I'm not doing all that. I'm not pursuing no woman, blah, 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 blah. But let them cross paths with a woman they feel like, oh my gosh, this could be it. And she's giving them the energy of interest as well, because that's important. Then that same man who said he wouldn't do it is going to be jumping through hoops and doing things that he said he wouldn't do, because his motivation now is there. He now sees someone that he has a strong enough desire for. So that plays into it as well. But ultimately, what I want you all to take away from this, and I said I would mention this at the end of the video, is, I've said it already, but I'm gonna say it again. I'm pointing out what exists and the reality of what's happening in the world today, but it doesn't define every man. It doesn't define every situation, because as we're talking right now, or as I'm talking to you right now, there's someone being courted. As we're talking right now, there are two people who are intentionally dating each other, pursuing something real. It still can happen for you. But you got to break free from what's going on in the world. You should understand it, but not lose yourself in it. Okay? And understand that God has bigger plans for you, but you have to also tap into what you have to do to receive what's for you. And part of that is even just believing that the good exists. You see, many of you have fallen into the trap of just saying there's no good men, or there's no point in dating, or just this negative perception put on all these things. And then naturally you're going to start to get, or you're going to continue to get negative results. It's hard to produce positivity with a negative mindset. So I pray deeply that when you watch this video or any video of mine, you understand the importance to still stay in a positive, healthy mindset that believes and embraces that God wants what's best for you. God wants you to experience great, amazing things. And if you do your part, you can get what you're supposed to get. Thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on Never Call a Man First for these 5 reasons. Just watch the video. I would tell them, yo, don't play that game. Call her first. You get that number, hit her up. I would encourage them, hey,